One of the questions I get asked a lot is, it seems like a lot of times that athletes here are doing rehabilitatively what they're also doing in terms of performance gains. Well, that's because the principles of how human anatomy work don't change just because you're injured. One of the things you'll always find is, for instance, you have a back injury or you have a knee injury or anything else, and they're going to be like, well, don't lift weights, because the excessive load is going to make that injury worse. So if your training modality, number one, has to be perfect to avoid injury, that's a problem. And number two, if you're already hurt and you can't use it, then it must be not working on basic anatomical principles that stimulate those areas. By that I mean, if you take, for instance, an ACL. When an ACL ruptures, it generally ruptures right in the middle of it or somewhere in that range. And the current surgery, or best methods, is to remove a piece of the patella tendon. You cut away the ACL and you install that piece of the patella tendon and replace the existing ACL for that. So you've got a couple problems in that. You've opened up the front part of the knee, so now you've got an injury to the patella tendon, and you've had to drill holes in the femur and the tibia to be able to replace the pre-existing ACL. You immediately get atrophy in the quad muscles and atrophy throughout the leg because it becomes sedentary, and because of the incision here, these muscles stop firing. So you have to immediately start getting them working. Any typical physical therapist will tell you that they use a lot of isometrics to get that going initially. They do a lot of manual therapy to try to help flush it, and so on. Well, what we do is, because the isokinetic device we have has no weight load to it, much like the gears of a bike, very early on in the rehabilitative process, you can start pushing on this that restores the strength of the leg. And it does so in a very stimulating fashion without any potential risk to the surgical area. And we'll also use water, because water provides resistance again without tremendous weight load. There's no risk in terms of moving the leg in different planes or in different ranges of motion to where we're going to damage the surgically repaired area. So if we're able to do things that highly stimulate very vulnerable areas, then obviously and clearly they would also stimulate things when they're very healthy. And you can do it at a much more intense level, which is what athletes require. The system is based upon principles that reflect how the anatomy works. And how the anatomy works does not change just because you're hurt.